Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name's Amy. I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the Niv, and we are in the Book of Ezra, and we are in chapter 5. And now we are moving on to a different king of Persia. So we had some work under Cyrus to rebuild the temple. It continued on in Xerxes through Artaxerxes, and in Artaxerxes, it actually was brought to a stop until the next king came into power. And now we're going to read a letter to that king. Tattenai, Tattenai, so Tattenai's letter to Darius. Now Haggai, Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the prophet, descendants of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of God of Israel, who was over them. Then Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jozadak, set to work to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem, and the prophets of God were with them, helping them. At that time, Tattenai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shethar-Bozaniah, and their associates went to them and asked, "Who authorized you to rebuild this temple and restore this structure?" They also asked, "What are the names of the men constructing this building?" The footnote of A there, see the Septuagint, that's Greek, Aramaic. We told them the names of the men constructing this building. Okay. But the eye of their God was watching over the elders of the Jews, and they were not stopped until the report could go to Darius and his written reply be received. In this copy of the letter that Tattenai, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shethar-Bozani, ShetharBozani, and their associates, the officials of Trans-Euphrates, sent to King Darius the report they sent him read as follows. So essentially, they just waited for the people who complained to die, and then just started building the temple again. They were going to make the king of Persia tell them to stop all over again, because God said it was time to rebuild, because the prophets said it was time to rebuild, so they rebuilt. Or they started. To King Darius, cordial greetings. The king should know that we went to the district of Judah to the temple of the great God. The people are building it with large stones and placing the timbers in the walls. The work is being carried on with diligence and is making rapid progress under their direction. We questioned the elders and asked them, "Who authorized you to rebuild this temple and restore the structure?" We also asked them their names so we could write down the names of their leaders for your information. This is the answer they gave us. "We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are building the temple that was built many years ago, one that the great king of Israel built and finished. Because our fathers angered the God of heaven, he handed them over to Nebuchadnezzar, the Chaldean, king of Babylon, who destroyed this temple and deported the people to Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild the house of God. He even removed from the temple, or palace, of Babylon the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem and had brought to the temple or palace in Babylon. Then King Cyrus gave them to a man named Sheshbazzar, Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor. and told him, take these articles and go deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem and rebuild the house of God on its site. So now we know it's in the exact same site. So this Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundations of the house of God in Jerusalem. From that day to the present, it has been under construction, but it has not yet been finished. Now, if it pleases the king, let a search be made in the royal archives of Babylon to see if King Cyrus did in fact issue a decree to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem. Then let the king send his decision in this matter. So, king, we don't know if this is true. Can you tell if this is true? And even if it is true, do you want them to build this temple? Did you ask for this? Did anybody ask for this? What are they doing? That kind of thing. But at least being reasonable and them asking instead of just assuming a bias, it is in our natural way to ask somebody in a position of authority what they would like us to do. It's kind of baked into the nature of us and baked into our culture and society no matter where we are. So the real question, I think, is who are you asking for authority to do anything? And is it the right person? I mean, I spend most of the day talking to him, so I recommend you start asking him what he wants you to do and wait until he tells you to ask a human and then do it. I find that works best for me. So if it doesn't work for you, then I hope you find what does. If you want to come back for the next video, you're going to get to hear the answer from the king of Persia, the king of Babylon, King Darius. Till the next video, friends. Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name's Amy, and I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the NIF, we are in the Book of Ezra, and we are in chapter 6. This is the decree of Darius, the king of Persia, the answer to, who told you could rebuild this temple? Because the Jewish people have such long memories, they just waited for the haters to die and then just resume the work that God told them to do, because ultimately they serve God and they don't serve the humans around them. They know that serving the humans around them and having to listen to them is just a matter of waiting. So let that inspire us if we're facing opposition on any one day. Just wait. God wins always anyway. Remember that. Because if they're an inspiration for anything, they're an inspiration to remember that God always wins anyway. The whole book is full of it. Chapter 6, verse 1. The decree of Darius. King Darius then issued an order, and they searched in the archives stored in the treasury of Babylon. A scroll was found. See, we've always been keeping archives. In the citadel of Ecbatana. Isn't that a fun name? Ecbatana. 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 Somebody should name their kid that, Ecbatana, or a pet or something. Hashtag Ecbatana. In the province of Media. Literally. Media. We didn't even make anything up. Really, we got it all from him. And it was written, and this was written on it. Memorandum. See, we weren't even original there. In the first year of King Cyrus, the king issued a decree concerning the temple of God in Jerusalem. Let the temple be rebuilt as a place to present sacrifices, and let its foundations be laid. It is to be 90 feet, got a footnote of A, in Aramaic, 60 cubits, or about 27 meters, high, and 90 feet wide, with 3 courses of large stones and 1 of timbers. The costs are to be paid by the royal treasury. Also the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, are to be returned to their place in the temple of Jerusalem. They are to be deposited in the house of God. Now then, Tadaniah, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shethar, Bozaniah, you and their fellow officials of that province, stay away from there. Do not interfere with the work of this temple of God. Let the governor of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild this house of God on its site. Moreover, I hereby decree what you are to do for these elders of the Jews in the construction of this house of God. Remember always that a leader has the responsibility of seeing things from more than one angle, and that what God says is justice, is what is fair for everybody. It's not going to be one of us is all right and one of us is all wrong. If you go pointing things out about other people, don't be surprised when that same leader comes looking at you and going, wait a minute, they're going to correct this, and now you're going to correct this. Because that's absolutely his way. So that's the way he inspires leaders to be too. So careful. If you don't bring drama, there won't be drama. If you seek revenge, you seek drama. He's got it. You don't need to. Right? It's a hard lesson for me too. Trust me. I'm not saying anything to you that I don't have to say to my own brain too. Okay? It's all right. But also we should all knock it off. The expenses of these men are to be fully paid out of the royal treasury from the revenues of Trans-Euphrates. You guys are going to pay for this temple. You guys that complained about this temple, you're going to pay to build it, so that the work will not stop. Whatever is needed, young bulls, rams, male lambs for burnt offerings to the God of heaven, and wheat, salt, wine, and oil, as requested by the priests in Jerusalem, must be given them daily without fail, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to the God of heaven and pray for the well-being of the king and his sons. Furthermore, I decree that if anyone changes this edict, a beam is to be pulled from his house, and he is to be lifted up and impaled on it. So death for interference. And for this crime, his house is to be made a pile of rubble, so nothing for your offspring either. May God, who has caused his name to dwell there, overthrow any king or people who lifts a hand to change this decree or destroy this temple in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have decreed it. Let it be carried out with diligence. So that is a major smack in the face. That is a major mind your business. Because he will and can level. You either build with him or he destroys it. Because your own nature will make it be destroyed. You can't build while you're focusing on revenge and destruction of other people. It interferes with building. It interferes with clear judgment. So it interferes with building. Completion and dedication of the temple. Then, because of the decree of King Darius had sent, Tadaniah, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shethar, Bozaniah, and their associates carried it out with diligence. So the elders of the Jews continued to build and prosper under the preaching of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah, a descendant of Edo. They finished building the temple according to the command of the God of Israel and the decrees of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. The temple was completed on the third day of the month of Adar, A-D-A-R, in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. Then the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the exiles, celebrated the dedication of the house of God with joy. For the dedication of this house of God, they offered 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 male lambs, and a sin offering for all of Israel, 12 male goats, one for each of the tribes of Israel. And they installed the priests in their divisions and the Levites in their groups for the service of God at Jerusalem, according to what is written in the book of Moses. The Passover. On the 14th day of the first month, the exiles celebrated the Passover. The priests and the Levites had purified themselves and were all ceremonially clean, as is appropriate. The Levites slaughtered the Passover lambs for all the exiles, for their brothers the priests, and for themselves. So the Israelites who had returned from exile ate it together with all who had separated themselves from the unclean practices of their Gentile neighbors in order to seek the Lord. So even if you were not born a Jew, if you were living as a Jew, as a foreigner living as a Jew in Jewish land, you are welcome to celebrate Passover with them and eat of the Passover lamb, because you were behaving in accordance with the law, at least in your outward behavior, and not being sinful by their rules. So you are welcome to be there. Because Judaism doesn't exclude people from joining. They just tell you have to follow their rules. These are the rules. You follow these rules. Congratulations. You're now at least religiously a Jew. We will treat you like our brethren, because we all worship the same God. Everybody who worships the same God we do is our brethren under the eyes of God, because God is in everybody. So I'll read that part again. So the Israelites who had returned from exile ate it, together with all who had separated themselves from the unclean practices of their Gentile neighbors, in order to seek the Lord, the God of Israel. Gentiles is everybody not genetically Jewish. Most likely the person who's watching this video. For 7 days they celebrated with joy the feast of the unleavened bread, because the Lord had filled them with joy by changing the attitude of the king of Assyria. This is still King Darius, because he's the king of Syria too. So that he assisted them in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel. Humans are rather finicky. God is really not. And he's immortal. So he can just absolutely wait for you to die and just pick something right up where it left off. And since you're dead, you won't be able to stop anything. And if you weren't with him, you're not in heaven. You're in Sheol, right? You're in the ground. You're cremated or wherever, and your soul is not in heaven. So you can't stop him. When your body dies, your power dies, unless you're doing the work of God and you're heading to heaven. That's why it's unwise to rely on men, and I mean that mankind, not one gender or another. It's finicky. Mankind is finicky. We're very finicky creatures. Homo sapiens, we're very driven by our emotions. Logic and reasoning is something we have to bring ourselves to. It helps. We have to have both because it helps balance us. Start with balance. Justice will follow. Hello, friends! Bible study. The Niv, Romans, chapter 7. We're going to do 1 through 13, which will take us through 2 different parables, but it is not all of chapter 7. Okay? Okay, so an illustration for marriage is what this first parable is called. Do you not know, brothers? For I am speaking to men who know the law. I mean, this is Paul. And now he's told you exactly who he's talking to. That the law has authority over a man only as long as he lives. For example, by law, a married woman is bound to her husband as long as he is alive. But if her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. So then if she marries another man while her husband is still alive, she is called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is released from that law and is not an adulteress, even though she marries another man, because she's no longer physically here. We're not bound to anybody who is no longer in your 3D environment. That is really very much so the law. Like, if you are not, universal law, not just Mosaic law, if you are no longer in communication with them, and even if there was some sort of soul tie, soul contract, if you believe in any of those things, and you're talking about an energy exchange of being able to pull off of anything like your sacral energy, any of that, if you're no longer in physical contact with this person, there's no intimacy happening between the two of you, they are not supposed to touch your energy or be able to affect your world at all. And people who continue to do so, in today's world, we would get restraining orders against them and call them stalkers. Because only a stalker proceeds to continue to try to interact with someone who does not want to interact with them, right? So, back to this. This is verse 4. So, my brothers, you also died to the law through the body of Christ, that you might belong to another, to him who was raised from the dead, in order that we might bear fruit to God. For when we were controlled by the sinful nature, the sinful passions aroused by the law were at work in our bodies, so that we bore fruit for death. But now, by dying to what once bound us, we have been released from the law, so that we serve the new way of spirit and not in the old way of the written code. So he's saying the old way of the written code of what is in Mosaic law, of what was considered sin, does not actually apply to us anymore. And that stuff felt sinful to us. And it made, so in the hearts of us, we have that capacity, like I've talked about before. The light and the dark, the good wolf, the bad wolf, the evil or the breathing life or the breathing death. Sometimes we want to do things because in our heart of hearts, and we know we still have these woundings inside of us that we're operating out of, because we know we're not supposed to do it. Is why it feels so delicious to do that thing you're not allowed to do. Right? So sometimes people seek that as like a pressure relief or any of the rest of that stuff because they know they're not supposed to. And he's saying once we remove all these excessive rules that are applied to what is sinful or not sinful, it suddenly relieves this power that those rules had over us in the first place. Because if you're simply not you might conduct yourself by a moral code of conduct, and that might be true of your faith, but that's true of you and your faith. It doesn't apply to anybody else in existence but you and your faith. You can't push that on anybody else, because first they must care about what you must care about. You follow? So it removes the ability of that sin or anything that might be attached to that sin to have power over you. Through Christ, sin no longer has power, because he's forgiven us for our sins before we've even committed them, for even wanting to commit them in our hearts. Before we've even done it, he's already forgiven us. It doesn't mean we don't have to do penance, and we don't have guilt, and we don't have any of the rest of that stuff, because there were two offerings in the Old Testament. One was for sin, one was for guilt. He's saying we no longer have to sacrifice the things we have to sacrifice to bring ourselves into that repentance. Struggling with sin, verse 7. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. Indeed, I would not have known what sin was except through the law. For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had said, do not covet. But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of covetous desire. For apart from law, sin is dead. Once I was alive apart from law. But when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died. I found that every commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought death. For sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me, and through the commandment put me to death. So we need the laws so we know where the bounds of the law are. Because we're reactionary people. We're still a reactionary people. Something feels like it should be illegal, and then we go make a law and say it is. And before that, it wasn't actually illegal. So then you couldn't have been sinning by doing that activity because it wasn't a sin yet. It wasn't illegal yet. Like they can't come back and prosecute you for crimes that you committed before it was a law. They have to wait until they make the law, and then you break the law, and then they can come and arrest you. So he's talking about sin as if sin is another being, as if it's another energy, as if it's another entity. And if you start getting into like demon lore, in which I encourage you, if you're going to do demon lore, you should look into angel lore, because it's up as above, so below. For every demon in existence, there is an angel in existence. They think of it as the demons are a personification of the sin. I use that term opposition and demon quite a bit, but I mean that for everything. Like the sin of addiction, or the demon of addiction, the demon of depression, the demon of this, the demon of that. It's very actually rather like, I like the show I watch it on Paramount Plus, because I'm all streaming at this point. A lot of people are. Evil, and how it is for Sister Andrea. The character Christian Prasad, the psychologist, and I love that show because I feel like it's almost like different hats that I put on. Because David is the priest, I'm a minister. Ben is like handy, and he's basically, he's very inclined, and I've done mechanical engineering. His sister is the computer programmer. Well, I can do that too. There's the nun, Sister Andrea, who sees the demons as personification. So I see that. I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. I'm working on my certification in NLP, and I'm an Arcturian energy healer. So now we start getting into Christian Prasad. And the talking, because all of therapy has really got a lot to do with the subconscious mind and the conscious mind talking to each other, healing your inner wounds so your brain is right. So that's what it's like for me. So he's talking about sin like Sister Andrea thinks of these demons as the personification of sin. And that's exactly what Christian Prasad said in one of those things. Sister Andrea, who people believe in, in the Catholic faith, the side of that church, truly is physically seeing the sin, although I think most of the priests just think she's very strange. That's the way they react to her, those actors, in my opinion. Because they can't see what she sees. But she doesn't care. She's just doing what she has to do anyway. And it doesn't matter. Because she's allowed to be that level of weirdness in that group. Because that's just accepted. There are going to be people who have abilities that you don't have, and that doesn't mean they're not real. And who are you to say that God couldn't have gifted them with that thing? What are they doing with that ability? Because what you do with your abilities is what makes one good or evil, not having them in the first place. This is a person, clearly, this character, she's a nun. She's chosen God. She married God. So she's just running around hunting demons because this is the gift that God gave her. She's keeping people safe from these demons. That's what she's supposed to do, in addition to everything. She can't do other jobs because she needs to be in a community where she can do that and be accepted for who she is. So that's what he empowered her to do. But when Christian Prasad, the psychologist, is explaining this to her daughter, which at this point in the show is considering, she's got 4, so I'm not even giving anything away. One of them is considering being a nun. She explains that Sister Andrea sees the physical personifications in her mind, like she's having illusions, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's how science would describe it, of demons, because they are the personification of a sin. And that's how she's seeing them, and that's how Paul is talking about them, which this is the start of the church. So it fully fits that they have a character on the show who does this kind of exact thing, because this is the start of how it is. So, verse 12, because we actually have 2 more verses left before we go. So then, the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and righteous and good, because it lets you see what you're not supposed to be doing in the first place. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. But in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it produced death in me through what was good, so that through the commandment, sin might become utterly sinful. You have to be able to see sin, acknowledge that it's sin, and then consciously choose not to engage. So the law serves the purpose. The 10 Commandments still hold true, but we're not supposed to need to be told them to do them anymore. They've been around for such a long time that we're supposed to know in our hearts not to do those things, and that we need to do more than just not do those things. Because in our heart is where we're supposed to be cultivating the immaculate heart that the Mother Mary and Jesus, our Lord and Savior, had. It is through their goodness of their heart that they saved the world. And only through goodness of heart and in servitude of others is one really saving the world for the sake of the world and not for one's own ego. It can't be about the glorification of you, but for goodness sake. Which is actually in another song, a variety of other songs that I happen to enjoy as well. So I'm going to wish you a happy Sunday. Welcome to a brand new week. It is also the full moon in Capricorn again, which you can find all in the daily astrology. Make sure you go take a look at those. They're also available to you up on this channel. Know that it is a day of karmic endings and situations and places and people, and there's so much energy in the air. So I would recommend that you keep your mind focused on bringing that goodness into the world and treating every person with dignity, grace, and respect. Because if you manage to do that, then you have managed to leave the world better than you found it. And it doesn't matter what else unfolds for the day. Remember, you don't actually need to know what's going on, beyond the next few moments, when you have full trust and faith in the divine. But it's okay if you feel like you need to know more about what's going on than that. He loves you one way or the other. Until tomorrow, friends, keep balanced. And remember, all you got to do is get through today, not being crappy to other people. I think you could manage it if you really want to. I have faith in you. Good luck. Hello, friends, and welcome to Adventures in Pixieland. My name is Amy. I'm an ordained minister, and we are in Bible study. We are in the NIV, and we will be through 2025. In this video, we are in Psalms 27, and it's a longer psalm, but we're only doing verses 1 through 6 in this video, and tomorrow you will be able to see the conclusion of it, which is verses 7 through 14. So let's jump in. This is a Psalm of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. From whom shall I be afraid? When evil men advance against me to devour my flesh, when my enemies and my foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, Even then, I will be confident. One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Me too, David. To gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of his tabernacle and set me high upon a rock. He will keep me out of danger, that's for sure. Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At his tabernacle, I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. Most definitely. I will sing and make music to the Lord.